Hot take. A lot of re-ranker benchmarks are grading the wrong thing, and that means teams throw away systems that would have helped in production.
Exactly. If you build RAG, the benchmark is supposed to tell you whether a re-ranker improves the final context your model sees, not whether it looks clever on a spreadsheet.
So this is not just, did Model A beat Model B by 1 point?
No. It is, does the benchmark measure the decisions a re-ranker actually makes under realistic retrieval conditions, with realistic candidate sets and realistic costs?
Give me the simple version. What should a good re-ranker benchmark measure?
3 things. First, can it move the truly useful document higher in the list? Second, does that improve downstream answer quality? Third, what does that gain cost in latency and money?
Concrete example. I search internal docs for, how do I rotate a customer signing key without downtime? Retriever gets 20 candidates. What is the benchmark checking?
It should check whether the re-ranker surfaces the runbook with the exact rotation sequence above generic security docs, old migration notes, and near duplicate pages. Then it should verify the answer actually gets safer and more complete because of that reorder.
That sounds obvious, but a lot of benchmarks stop at relevance labels.
Right, and that is where things go sideways. A document can be labeled relevant and still be weak for generation. Maybe it mentions key rotation, but skips the no downtime constraint. For RAG, partial relevance can still produce a bad answer.
So a benchmark can say the re-ranker did fine, while the user still gets a broken answer.
Yes, if your metric rewards any vaguely related document, it hides whether the re-ranker found the specific evidence needed to answer correctly. That is the whole job.
Let us push on candidate quality, because that seems like the trap.
It is the trap. A re-ranker can only reorder what the retriever hands it. If the right document never enters the candidate set, the re-ranker cannot rescue you, and the benchmark should make that visible.
So if my benchmark uses a candidate set that is too easy, I am flattering the re-ranker. If it uses a set that never contains the right answer, I am punishing it for retriever failure.
Exactly. Candidate quality is the ceiling and the floor. A good benchmark reports retrieval recall at K before re-ranking, then re-ranker lift given that candidate pool. Otherwise, you do not know who deserves credit.
Practical scenario. A support bot answers refund policy questions. Retriever pulls top 50 chunks from a noisy knowledge base with duplicated articles and stale regional rules. What would a bad benchmark do?
A bad benchmark would use hand-cleaned candidates where the gold chunk is always present and duplicates are removed. Then every re-ranker looks great. In production, the same model may drown in stale policy pages and fail the actual customer.
So the benchmark quietly removes the exact mess the re-ranker is supposed to handle.
Yes, and that hides re-ranker value in the opposite direction too. If your offline set is low recall and the right chunk is missing most of the time, a strong re-ranker looks useless because it never gets a fair shot.
That feels strategic. Teams could kill a good re-ranker or overbuy a bad one just because the benchmark is misspecified.
They do. The loser is usually the product team that ships longer prompts, higher token spend, and worse answers because they never measured the re-rank stage correctly.
What does a healthy benchmark look like in practice, not in theory?
Start with real user queries, including messy ones. Preserve realistic retrieval output, duplicates, stale docs, and near misses. Label not just relevance, but answer usefulness. Then measure retrieval recall, re-ranker lift at top positions, downstream answer accuracy, and latency.
I want one more example, maybe one programmers can picture immediately.
Sure. Say you have codebase Q&A. The question is, why does the billing webhook retry forever after a 409? Retriever brings back an API guide, a retry policy doc, an outdated incident report, and the actual fix buried in a postmortem. A good benchmark checks whether the re-ranker puts the postmortem and retry policy in the top context, because that combination lets the model explain both the cause and the remediation.
And a weak benchmark?
It gives points because the API guide mentions 409 and webhooks, even though that context leads the model to answer confidently and incorrectly. That benchmark says success. Your pager says otherwise.
So the real test is not, can the Reranker spot related text? It is, can it promote the evidence that changes the final answer?
Exactly. And because re-rankers operate under a retriever's constraints, the benchmark has to expose both the candidate pool quality and the incremental gain from reordering. That is how you separate retrieval problems from ranking problems.
If teams get this right, what changes?
They stop treating re-ranking like cosmetic polish and start using it as a control point. Better benchmarks show where recall is the bottleneck, where ranking is the bottleneck, and where extra context is just noise.
Which means better answers, lower prompt bloat, and fewer fake wins in evaluation.
Yes, a good re-ranker benchmark does one thing ruthlessly well. It measures whether better ordering creates a better answer from the candidates you actually have.